Let's welcome our speaker, Barbara from Fifth.
Hey, I'm Barb B, or Barbie, and I'm an alcoholic, and it's good to be here. And thank you, Lisa, for asking me to speak and tell my story tonight. And I did pray with my friend Diana beforehand because I never know really what's going to come out of my mouth. I don't really know. I mean, I know I'm here to either tell you what it was like, what happened, what I'm like now, my relationship, how I developed a relationship with a higher power. So I'm just going to do the best I can to try to get that across. I'm a little scattered. It's been a rough weekend. I had what I call my sober dog, Casey. I got him when I was less than a year sober, and I had to put him down on Friday. So it was, like a lot of lack of sleep and emotion attached to that. But, God works in mysterious ways. So I'm telling my story tonight and again on Friday night. Service work helps me get out of self and out of my head. And, I was just very grateful that he was just a great companion, and some of the people in this room knew him, and it's awesome. And it's different. If I was drinking, I would have a totally different reaction to putting my dog down, I'm sure. I would probably be drunk right now. Well, I know I would be drunk right now, probably passed out, blacked out, feeling full of self-pity. And instead, I'm really feeling grateful that I had him in my life for 13 years, and he was just a great companion. So, sobriety does change things. My sobriety date is July 15th of 2010. I have a sponsor who I met on my very first day. The very first day I picked up a white chip. I have a home group, which is the same home group on that very first day when I picked up my first white chip, and my only white chip actually. And I sponsor women, and I have developed a relationship with a higher power that I sometimes choose to call God, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I say spirit of the universe or goddess or whatever. I change it around to kind of whatever I'm feeling at that time. But I definitely have a relationship with something bigger than me that I did not have when I came in. Thought I did, and then I was all kind of cocky. I kind of remember that first meeting and think, oh, God, yeah, like I've got a relationship with God. I had no relationship with God. Like I thought it was all spiritual. I used to go to these like Buddhist temples, and I'd be like so drunk. And I thought that was, spiritual, and they would all, I wondered why they were shunning me, it probably just reeked of alcohol. I think I was born, I hear this sometimes in the room, needing a drink, man. I was just one of those. I was so fearful of just life when I was, from the first moments that I can remember. I just didn't fit in. It didn't really, I had a decent family. There wasn't anything wrong with my family. I started drinking when I was 13. And I just knew at that time, from those first drinks, that I was going to make a career out of drinking. Like they talk about drinking career, I can totally relate to that, because that is just, I knew that's what I was going to do. Once I discovered alcohol, I was not going to not have it in my life. I was a child so I came in at 13 and I got sober at 56. So like I drank a lot of years, and alcohol was my baby. But when you're raised in the 70s, 60s and 70s, there's a lot of drugs. They just never got a hold of me, thank God. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I would have come in sooner if they would have. But so I did a lot of drugs, but alcohol was the thing that stayed with me through the whole experience, my whole drinking experience. So it was easier actually to get drugs when I was 13 than alcohol. And so I did whatever I could. I tried them all, and like I said, nothing ever really took hold. There was always alcohol. 13, I mean, I don't know. It just, I was so afraid of people, and life, that those first drink, I don't even remember what I drank. I don't remember like my first drink. I remember kind of the era of first drink, and it was beer, and it was either Schlitz, Falstaff, or there was another one. There was Pabst. No, it wasn't even that. But they were horrible beers. Like I don't think anybody would drink. Maybe people still drink them. I don't even know if they're still around. It didn't really matter. It was just like whatever. And I loved and I was one of those that like I threw up a lot. I didn't handle liquor well and alcohol well at all, beer included. I just spilled a lot of body fluids like throughout my whole drinking career, whatever, just use your imagination there, you know. And I remember there's a part in the book, and it talks about Jekyll and Hyde, and it talks about like insanely drunk and personality change. And I remember when I first came in, I'm like, I don't think I was really like that, you know, like, because they're kind of describing a sociopath, you know, or somebody that personality changes. And I had my best friend Janet, and she and I knew each other from third grade, and we drank very similarly. And her mom was an alcoholic, and her personality would flat out change, and she'd get in all these fights with her boyfriends. And you know, I watched this for years, and I'm like, she's an alcoholic, you know, like. And then one day Janet decided that, and they talk about her in the book, she just decided that alcohol was interfering with her relationships, and that she just was going to moderate. She didn't even have to quit, and she moderated. And that was probably 20 years ago, and she can still do that. And I remember when she was going through that, I'm watching her going, how does she do that? Like, how can she sit there and have one glass of wine? We used to drink the same. I don't understand. Now, I don't know I'm an alcoholic. I don't know what alcoholism is. You know, I was a heavy drinker for a lot of years, you know, and I was the party girl, and that's what I did from the age of 13 and on. But she could do that, and I was baffled, absolutely baffled. And I remember, like, throughout my drinking career, I would ask myself and be with friends and say, do you think we're alcoholics? Like, no, I got my job. You know, I'm working. Like, that was my barometer. You know, it didn't matter if I drank every day. It didn't matter if I had hellacious hangovers every day. I showed up to work. I can't be an alcoholic. And I lived with that until I was 56, and I wanted to kill myself. You know, like, I still worked. Like, I never lost a job. So one of the things I was thinking about before I came, one of the many things I love about Alcoholics Anonymous in the steps is it never tells us, like, how much we have to drink or what we have to look like or how long we have to drink or, you know, like, how many DUIs you have to have. It doesn't do any of that. Like, it etched in my soul is, like, I know I'm powerless over alcohol, but it took me a long time to figure that out because I went with such a different, you know, under the bridge, you know, lost everything kind of definition of what it takes to be an alcoholic. And, you know, I drank. So what's that, junior high, I guess it was then, when I started drinking, and into high school. And, you know, I functioned until I walked into AA, you know, but the progression was interesting. It was just this long, slow descent into soul death, you know, is kind of what it was. It was like, at the end, I was so flatlined in my soul, yet I was still working. You know, it's like, I still am amazed that I could power through some of the hangovers. So I get through high school, and I was in an all-girls Catholic high school, which was a trip, you know, and the nuns, and we used to sneak out and do drugs, and I remember dropping mescaline in class. I mean, we were just a wild little group. I got alcohol as much as I could, and I used to just sneak out, and I was just like kind of a bad little kid, you know. I was the youngest of my family. There was 3 older siblings, and my parents were kind of checked out by that time. They had me older in life, and they were just looking at retirement, you know. So it's just like, let's just move her, like, just get her out of here, you know. So as soon as I went to college, they were like, bam, retired to Florida. They couldn't wait to get away. So they gave me a lot of leeway. They didn't pay that much attention to me, you know. And I was like kind of the black sheep of the family, but not bad enough that they did anything about it. So my first year, I go to college, and oh man, it was a disaster. I just, the drugs, I never went to class, and people were overdosing all around me, and I was doing Quaaludes and drinking, and just, it was bad. That was not a good year. I don't even know if I had a .1 average, so I don't even know how I got. Anyway, I came home and I slept for the whole summer. It was like a disaster. You know, I thought it was going to be the beginning of such a beautiful life, and it's college, and it's like, oh my God, these are the glory days, and it was like, oh Lord, it was horrible. So then I went to a community college. It took me 7 years to get a 4-year degree. I have a son who's beat me. It's taken him 13, but you know, and he could be one of us, but I've learned I cannot pronounce anybody an alcoholic. as I found out with my friend Janet. So then I went, kind of, my alcoholism I'd get these periods where I could kind of hold it together a little bit. And so I was working full time after that and going to community college, and I was still going to the bars every night, but I kept it together. And then I finally ended up in a 4-year institution, and I got a degree in horticulture. That was my very first degree. And I moved, God, when was that? In 78. I then moved here to Atlanta. So that was all in Michigan. And, I was keeping it together pretty much, drinking, like every day. Like that was just going to be part of it. I didn't even start blacking out until the last 2 years of my drinking. I mean, like, it's just amazing. Like I hear of some people who day one, drink one, they black out. And so like fast forward 41 years into my drinking and I start blacking out. It's just crazy. I don't even know why it progressed. I'll get to that. So I came to Atlanta. Atlanta in 78, 79 was it might still be a party town. I don't know. I don't live that life anymore, but it was really a party town back then. The Little Five Points Pub and the Moonshadow Saloon and the Downtown Cafe, the back street. I mean, there was just like some really cool places to hang out. And so I was like definitely a barfly. And I did that for about the first 4 years I was here. And I worked a horticulture job. I mean, it did not take much like to plant seedlings, I mean, I could nod out at it didn't require a lot of me actually. And so it was probably the perfect job. I mean, I could go have lunch, have a Bloody Mary with lunch, and nobody knew any better. That did not bode well later when I became a nurse. It doesn't work the same. You got to have your wits about you a little bit more. But anyway, so it was around 83, and was it 83? Yeah, it was in 1983, and this is the first time that maybe my drinking got some attention from me, because, I can manage, so why pay attention if it's working for you? So in 83, my sister was dying of cancer, and she was worried about me because of my lifestyle. Like I was just a barfly, and what had happened in 83 was there was a sexual assault that I was so drunk that I couldn't really like fend off the person. And in a way it was good that I was so drunk, because 2 weeks later somebody did try to fend this man off and he stabbed her to death. And so this man who was in my home, that was a friend of my roommates, had the capacity to kill. I could have been that person. Kind of got my attention, but in a twisted way, because I'm like, God, I'm so glad I was drunk, because I didn't fight him off, so in a way it worked out kind of in my favor, I guess. I got pregnant, and it wasn't a good thing, and my sister was extremely worried about me. And at the same time, there was a man that was kind of pursuing me who didn't drink, and I knew even way back then that I should not be with somebody who drank. So he seemed kind of attractive because he didn't drink, and he had a house and a business, and he was my safety net. And I married that safety net, and it wasn't the healthiest of relationships. I did have 2 sons. I have a whole different perspective of the relationship now. Like when I first got sober, and through the whole marriage, he was always the problem. Like he was the problem. He's why I drank. He's an asshole. I mean. And I have some clarity about that today, and have had to make amends to him. I made one amends to him, and a year later realized that was a half-assed amends, and I had to go and make a real amends, because he really did do the best that he could. We're kind of okay today. Like I can't say we're friends, but we're friendly enough, because of the kids. So I had two boys in that relationship who are now in their 30s, and I have a decent relationship with them today. One of them I never really lost. The other one had drifted away for a while. When I was going through a divorce, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So I thought the marriage was the problem. So 20 years after I decided I would probably commit homicide if I stayed married to him. And so I thought it best that I divorce instead of, I was literally looking in like Soldier of Fortune magazine looking for hit men. Like I thought that was the way, like that's alcoholic thinking. Like divorce or murder. And it was like, murder seemed like the better thing to do at the time, but I didn't even follow through all the way with the commitment. The thought maybe, but not the commitment. So I get divorced, and I think, and so this was about 2008. Now I get sober 2 years later. I thought he was the problem. So when he goes away, everything should be good. Those last 2 years is what took me down. Like, I drank for 41 years before that, and I was kind of functioning, but I was like hangovers every day. Jump back just a little bit. So in 90, I went to nursing school. I'd had my kids. I had one of them the very last day of classes. And so I didn't drink. The 2 times I didn't drink in my life were the 9 months or so of my pregnancy. And for some reason, I didn't drink. I don't know if it just didn't taste. I don't know what it was. But I actually went those 2 9-month periods almost to the end without drinking. And I remember so I go to nursing school and I get my degree. And I remember sitting at the nurse's station one day going, when did these hangovers start again? Like, because my husband didn't drink, and I would always have wine, and I didn't have a shut-off valve with wine, so I drank alone for my whole life, my whole married life. And I know, like, one of the check boxes is, like, do you drink alone? And I'm like, well, I have to. He doesn't drink, that was never a thing. And I would always start out thinking I'm going to have 1 or 2 glasses, and I did this forever. I'm going to have 2 drinks tonight, and I believed it. And then the bottle of wine would get like below the halfway mark, and like when it gets below the halfway mark, you can't keep it. Like, you have to drink it because then there's not enough for the next day. So of course I had to drink the whole bottle. And then if you open another one, and so I would always drink a full bottle by myself every night, just like making dinner and that kind of thing. And then on weekends is when I would really party with some friends. And I had different groups of friends that I would party with. I'd have my Tuesday night friends, I had my Wednesday, I'd have my Friday, my Saturday night friends. And I always thought they all drank like that, like me, every day, because that's what I did. And I remember a friend of mine one time says, I only drink like this with you. And I'm like, no, you're lying. You drink like this every day. 'Cause she was like my Saturday night friend. And she really didn't drink like I did. It's funny, after I got sober and I saw some of these people drink, I'm like, damn, they didn't drink like me at all. When I left the book club, they said, once you left, we drank so much less. So during the book club, I thought that was wine. Wine was the thing that I didn't have a shut-off valve, So then it talks about in the book switching liquor, So then I went to vodka. Well, I found out I don't have a shut-off valve with vodka either. And then I went to gin, and I landed on gin. And I thought it was so classy because it was Bombay Sapphire and the blue thing, and it was beautiful. And towards the end, it was just like, and it's so funny that we do this, but like going to different liquor stores because like I don't want them to know how much I'm really drinking. And because I'm a nurse at this time, right? And I go to the liquor store, and at this point, I had been a hospital nurse, and I tell you, I just hope some of my actions didn't contribute to somebody's death, because I worked in the ER on weekends, and I worked in a school during the week, and I would say, and this is what I did for years, Friday night, I'm going to have 2 drinks with my friends because I have to work, and I have to be there at 7 o'clock in the morning. And so at 2 in the morning, when I'd still be sitting there, I'd be like, and I would get up and go to work at 7 in the morning. And I imagine I reeked of alcohol. And they would kind of laugh and say, oh, Barbara's got a hangover, here's some Coca-Cola, and it just kind of haunts me a little bit that, like, I didn't show up fully equipped to be 100% effective as a nurse. And I don't think I actually did, like, really harm somebody, but I wasn't at my best. And I had a friend who was a nurse, and she would come to the porch that we would drink at on Friday nights, and she says, I'm working tomorrow morning at 7. I'm only going to have a glass of wine. And she would have that glass of wine, and she could do that. And it was always baffling to me how people could do that, and I just couldn't. So working as the nurse, and I got divorced. I thought everything was his fault. And so the last 2 years of my drinking were absolutely like all I knew how to do was drink. So I was going to the bars. I could drink how I wanted to at home. There was nobody there. I remember every night just getting so destroyed. I would literally be bouncing off my walls, thinking like, this is the way you're going to die. Like you're just going to be this lonely old woman drunk. I was at that point where like I can't imagine life without alcohol. Like I can't. I've never thought about not drinking. Like I was not one of those that said, let ever put together, it's the first drink. I always thought it was that third or fourth or sixth or eighth and I'd go to the doctor and they go, I'm a little concerned about your labs. And she goes, I want you to have 5 drinks a week. And I'd look at her and go, I have, you always tell the doctor you have 2 a night, right? And I'm thinking, God, I have 5 before 7 o'clock every night. I was a 5 o'clock drinker. That was the other reason I thought I wasn't an alcoholic is like I would hold on until 5 o'clock, but I knew at 5 o'clock I was going to have that drink. And if I didn't have that drink, I was a raving maniac. And I remember going to dinner sometimes with my husband, and there wouldn't be alcohol in the restaurant, and I would flip and just say, literally be screaming, I have alcohol with my meals. How we can't stay? And we would leave the restaurant and go find one that had drinks. Like I couldn't not drink at 5 o'clock. It was just impossible. I would take, if I had to go to things with my kids, I would always have my to-go cup in, the gin and tonic would be in a water bottle or in a something, so I could disguise it. I would pre-drink. I did all that stuff, so the last 2 years got my attention. I couldn't figure out why I was blacking out. I quit just talking about what I did the night before. I'm driving in blackouts. When I talked about that sociopathic Jekyll and Hyde thing, I thought, oh, that wasn't me. And then I remember when my kids were little, I would be drunk and I'd be driving, they would be in the car with me and I'd be driving them drunk. I'm like, that is like antisocial, like not normal behavior. I don't do that kind of stuff when I'm sober. My personality does change. My clothes don't fall off when I'm sober, like they do when I'm drunk though, and it's like I do things that I won't do otherwise. And it took me a while to figure out that that's, it was alcohol. But I didn't want to live, I couldn't imagine a life without alcohol, so I never thought about not drinking. It was never on the table. I just would rather die. And it talks about that too. And spiritual basis or an alcoholic death, I didn't know about AA, but I was going to do the alcoholic death because I couldn't imagine life without alcohol. So it got to the point, so in July of 2010, I remember I was like suicidal. I was so depressed, and I thought, I just wanted to die. I just didn't know what was wrong with me. I don't know this is alcoholism. I don't know what it is. And I got this, now I know it was God, my higher power. The thought came into my head, if you don't do something about your drinking, you're going to kill yourself or somebody else. I'm driving in blackouts. I'm thinking suicide. That got my attention. And within a short period of time, like a couple days after that thought, I got the courage to call the central office. And you know how some of us, I think I have a problem with alcohol, and they're like so sweet on the other end. Well, dear, there's a meeting in your neighborhood like tonight. And I'm like, oh, wait, what? Like, no, it's not that bad, really. I think I was just making too big of a deal. I was already drunk at that time, and that was my last drunk. So for some reason, that Thursday, I woke up and I was so tired. I was so done. I was just like, I can't do this another day. And I had all these little I had bottles and pot, and I did smoke a little bit every day just because it kind of got me to where I wanted to be a little quicker. Threw that away. For some reason, I just wanted total sobriety. I knew I just wanted total sobriety. I was smoking cigarettes at that point. I quit for 25 years. That last 2 years, I'm a chain smoker, man. I am Camels. I'm just constantly smoking. And it was so the cigarettes and the alcohol, and oh my God, I was so tired. And I actually went to my first meeting, and that was a Thursday, and it was July 15th of 2010. And I walked in, and I was in the parking lot, of the old church, and this goofy man, John S., who many of you know, comes up and says, "Hey, I'm John. You know, who are you? What meetings do you go to?" And I'm looking at him. He's like, "Is this your first meeting, like, ever?" Because I deer in the headlights, you know, because I didn't even bring my cigarettes. Like, I didn't know, like, what AA was at all. I just knew that it was a cult, and I was desperate. And so I was going to join the cult because, like, just for a while, you know, just to quit drinking. And here comes John, and he introduced me to a group of women. And I will tell you, they saved my life. There was something so special about them just surrounding me. And I really don't know what I'm doing, but I felt protected, and I felt their love, and I felt, it sounds Hollywood and corny, and that's exactly what it was. It was just like this beautiful experience. And went to the meeting, and like, you know, I don't know anything about AA, and they're like, "Pick up a white chip," and I'm like, "What is that?" And they go, "Well, just go do it." And at that point, I was really surrendered. I was so done. And my sponsor, I didn't know she was going to be my sponsor at the time, but she said, "I'll be your sponsor." And I'm like, I don't even know what that is, but, you know, and I didn't say yes. It took me about 2 weeks to get the courage to ask her to be, you know, because I went to enough meetings. And they said, go to meetings every day, and, you know, they told me what to do. And actually, I came to I don't know if I should share that or not. I came to a meeting my second night, and it was a totally different response. Like, actually, I was in this room, and I was one of the only women, and it was a Friday, and it was many years ago now, and meetings are different, but not one person, I didn't feel welcome. In fact, I asked him, I said, "Am I allowed to be here?" Like if that would have been my first meeting, like, I don't know what would have happened. So it's so important, I think, that we always make sure we're holding our hands out and welcome, because people die from this disease. And I don't know if that would have been my first meeting, if I would have found AA attractive enough to come back. But fortunately, I kept going, and I got my sponsor, and we just started right into the steps. It transformed my life. I mean, it's just like, you know, from the outside looking in, you know, I looked kind of okay, you know, but inside, absolutely transformed. Like, from this fearful person, I was so afraid of everything. When we got to the 4-step inventory, like, my fear inventory was huge. I was petrified of everything in life and people, and the people in the trees that were always looking at me and out to get me. I mean, I was paranoid. I was like, life was out to get me. You know, anyway, they're not there anymore. Those demons have been lifted, you know, and it was through doing this work, you know. And I came in so desperate and drowning, like it talks about in the book, and just I cried every day for months, you know. It was just like so raw, and like you took my best friend and my enemy away at the same time. Like, how do I feel these feelings? I didn't I didn't know what to do with that. I've been drinking since I was a kid. I got honest for the first time. I developed a relationship. I've learned to develop relationships with other human beings, which I didn't do before. I could absolutely numb myself with alcohol and keep you separate. I could be kind of a party person, but still feel totally alone in the room. And so my sponsor really helped me be honest. Like, she was just this, you know, we just went through the steps, and it was transformative. And she reminds me today, this is your best, you know, because sometimes I'll still go into a little whiny self-pity, and she goes, "You know, you're living your, like, best life." And she's right. I mean, you know, I just had a big birthday, and I threw myself a big birthday party for this big birthday. And I realized, like, before, I thought that would be the end of my life. You know, like, oh my God, you're going to be like 70 is ancient. And it was the best time, and full of love and people, and some of the people in the room here were there, and it was just a beautiful experience. And I wouldn't compare that, you know, I compare that to, like, before I got sober, and I have these pity parties and go, if I died, I wouldn't have anybody at my funeral, you know. And it was like, and maybe that would have been true, I don't know. I didn't have a lot of people then, you know, and my life has expanded so much, and I've learned how to relate to humans and love and be vulnerable, and So much of that is we talk about how we developed a relationship with God. And when I first came in, I was kind of like, my sponsor said, okay, I want you to read 86 to 88 every day. And I'm like, look at that. She's putting me to step 11 like right away. And I'm really only on step 1, And that was where I learned to pray. That is when I learned that I did not have a relationship with a higher power. And that is how I learned how to have a relationship with a higher power. And I read 86 to 88 every day for 4 years. Like, it guided me, like, every day. I needed that. And over time, I was just talking earlier before coming here, a friend was, she was struggling with prayer. And I said, the beautiful thing about it is like experiential. When I start out my day with, it could be just a short little, hi God, thank you, I'm ready to face my day, guide me. It could be that. My day's going to go better. And the only way I know that is because when I don't do that, I might not have a bad day, but I might have an off day, like a judgmental day, a day where I'm not connected, like people get under my skin, That's how I usually know I'm not connected. I start looking at people going, oh my God, what an ass, or like I roll my eyes, or, like I just get that discontent, and I'm very judgmental, like that's the big one. And that's my red flag now, like when I've got to jump back in. And so I have a lot of different practices that I do. I don't stick to the same thing anymore, but I do make sure that every day I have some kind of contact with God, because that's my connection to you and the world, that's how I survive. Like I talk to God now pretty much all day. Like, you got me here, this person, like sometimes they make me a little crazy or whatever, and give me the right words. I do a lot of short little prayers, show me the truth, give me clarity, give me the words, or just guide me, or, are you with me here? Because then I'm just like, I just have a better handle and can function better in life, So I've developed and I slip, and the way I know is I get irritable and things get under my skin. One day the dogs were getting under my skin, and I thought, whoa, girl, like when the dogs are starting to bother you, you got a problem, they are just not those kind of like creatures like humans that talk back, like they're just sweet and waggy. And so then I do like a scan of my program. So when I first came in, it was like those 5 basic requirements. What do? You go to meetings, you have a home group, you do service work, you're transparent, you pray every day. I do those things. Like every day I am wrapped in AA in one way or another. Like it has become so woven in me now. Like I can't go anywhere in the world where I don't bring this program with me. It is just, I do it every day. I have a church that I'm affiliated with. It's a pretty liberal church, but I find that I can't separate AA from my life. Like they're one. Like you can't do it. It can't be over here I'm doing AA, and over here I'm an asshole, or whatever. The principles come with us everywhere. I just strive every day, like one of my show me how to be the best, and then fill in the blank. Am I going to work? The best employee, the best sponsor, the best mother, the best whatever, ex-wife. I don't have to do that one very often, but I do it if necessary. It's just simple little things like that. I'm just so grateful for this program and the ability to be able to stand up here. Like I was so full of fear. Oh my God, before I got sober, like I was one of those that couldn't breathe if I was with people. Like I just paralyzed with fear. What do I do today? I before I get up here, I say a prayer. God, just let me just help. Not even help, just let me be authentic, maybe reach somebody that may be struggling, just relate a little bit somewhere, and I'll do that anytime I have to do any kind of public speaking. Let me be a good representative of AA. And I was taught that. My sponsor said, everywhere you go, be a good example of AA, even if people don't know. So, because she would say things like at the grocery store, like, if that person that you're a jerk to shows up at the AA meeting and you have just been a jerk to that person. It could happen. I've run into people in AA meetings that I've worked with, or parents at the school that I worked at, that kind of thing. We want to be good examples of AA kind of wherever we are, because you just never know. And it could offer, there's a lot of times that people, I'm pretty open with being in the program in my life. I'd rather have people, I'm not real anonymous about my sobriety. It's amazing how people then will come get in touch and say, my neighbor actually had 2 people this past week, and she's not an alcoholic, and she's like, whoa, what is this? And a couple of her friends were in crisis this week, and so she reached out to me, and I could, one of them I could reach out to, the other one's he's in lockdown, so I couldn't help him, but said if he said, when he comes out, if he says he wants help, I can hook him up with some guys in the program, and this woman, I kept in touch with her, and she's hitting meetings again, and husbands about their wives about their husbands, kids, mothers, what can I do, to help? So I think it's, for me, and everybody's different with how anonymous they want to be. I'm one that just believes, you never know who's going to need you at some point, and people come out of the woodwork sometimes. There's a lot of us out there, and a lot of us look kind of like me, and I wasn't the most obvious alcoholic. In fact, I was just talking I have a sponsee that when she relapsed one time, she said, I don't even think you're an alcoholic. You're just too nice. And I wasn't the meanest alcoholic in the bunch, but I could have a sharp tongue on me. But I was more of the happy-go-lucky one. I kept a lot of the stuff to myself. I wasn't the Jekyll and Hyde in that sense. I was in the Jekyll and Hyde in the sense that I drove drunk with my kids in the car. It is what it is, and I'm glad we're all okay. And I didn't kill anybody. But this side, there's such a definite mark in my life from 13 plus years ago, before AA and after AA, and I would never go back. Even if somebody said to me, well, you could have 1 or 2 drinks and drink normally, I wouldn't give this up, man. This is just too beautiful, this way of life that I have now. But I have to do this stuff every day. I know I have to stay in, the middle of the bed, as we say. I've got to do my AA stuff on a regular basis. I am not immune from this disease. None of us are immune from this disease. And so I treat it daily. And I just appreciate y'all being here and listening to me, and that's my story.
Thank you so much, Barbara. I could totally relate to a lot of the Catholic school thing, for sure.